In case you haven't heard, America's medical industry is pretty effed, but it doesn't have to be. Welcome to Right to the Root. I'm your host, Stephanie Wright, and I've built my career on helping practices reach their full potential. Join us as we dig down to the root of the insurance industry's most complex problems and how we might be able to turn it all around. We're back with Dr. Paul Henny today as we talk about the challenges dentists in America face today and the pressure that they have from the insurance company.
You know, for the amount of startups that I've even worked with, and again, to helping young doctors, even when doctors call me up, they're about to purchase this practice and they need to have a consultant and they don't know what they have to do. And I say, I can stand by your side all day long, but the only thing you should be focused on is the relationship between your team and your patients. That's it. Call me in 12 to 18 months. If there's things that come up, little hairy situations that you just don't know how to handle, I don't want you to sign a contract. Send me an email. Give me a call. Let's walk through some of those things. But at the end of the day, you're not shit without your team right now. And then you're really not shit without your patients. And so your team, you're not going to be able to do anything, schedule an appointment, get them in. And especially if you're purchasing that practice, those patients love that team. And so you want to know what you need to make those team, they have to believe in you. That's the whole thing. Your patients have to believe in you. And I seldom help doctors right from the get-go. And they think that they have to have somebody like holding their hand through. And it's like, no, in 18 months, we'll talk about different strategies for your practice. We'll talk about the different goals that you have for it. But you need to see these patients 2 or 3 times to see if they actually like you, trust you, and believe in you.
Well, I'm sure a lot of, some things never change. I'm sure a lot of dentists, get into very high overhead situations right
Sure.
out of the gate. So, the only solution they have, and of course, all their friends are telling them this too, is you got to scale it up, and you got to scale it up now. So you'll see, one of the Facebook groups that I just kind of pay attention to is a Facebook group that's oriented towards dentists that are doing new startups. And so, a lot of them are relatively new out of school. Some of them have been at it for a little more time than that. But every floor plan they put up there has 10 operatories in it, 12 operatories in it. And obviously they're not going to be the only dentist in that building, but that's their vision of the future is staying with insurance and scaling it up. So you're playing the let's industrialize this thing to the maximum game.
Yeah.
So it's high delegation, it's low interpersonal contact, it's moving people. It's the McDonald's,
quantity over quality.
It's the McDonald's drive-through line, basically. Mm-hmm. And then they want to know why people aren't buying more comprehensive care, because they were just at the Hilton and they were told if they just spend an hour and a half with people, they're going to change their, trajectory of their life. So that doesn't work out. So then they start taking implant courses. So they heard that if they do more implants, they can raise their bottom line, which is true. But the problem is if they start doing implants on mouths that they don't understand, they can really screw up things fast. So it's, the water gets deeper. Mm-hmm. And then they find they have to have a good attorney because some things don't work out. And so it's unfortunate, it's expensive to be trained and licensed to be a dentist. Very expensive, ridiculously expensive.
Yeah.
And then you're forced into a situation where, to buy a practice that has any reasonable amount of cash flow is going to be expensive too. And then, of course, there's this BMW that you have your eye on. And around you go. So that's why they're calling the consultant the first year. It's like, well, how do I scale this thing up so I can have the BMW and the income to pay for all this debt?
I absolutely. And that's the amount of times I've worked with clients and I've told them from the beginning that this is how I work and operate, and I'll help you and I'll support you. But if you're calling me up within, 8 weeks, and you want to go ahead because you're sold on the next sleep appliance thing, and this person in California, and that's their whole center practice, and they're making millions of dollars within their first 2 years and stuff. And I'm like, I don't care. You learn your bread and butter. Well, I want a scanner. No, you don't need a scanner. You don't. Why don't you make sure that you have enough crowns you're doing so that maybe you can pay for it? When you work on that relationship where your patients can trust you, there's generational dentistry gaps that are happening. So you're learning different things, and you might be diagnosing different things than your other patient or than the other doctor. And you need to learn how to balance that of having a conversation first before they think like, I went to Dr. Smith for 20 years. He never told me this, and that's really this whole idea to like keep on spending the money. And the conversations I've had to have is to say, like, I can't bail you out on this one, or tell them even worse, you're going to go to jail at some point. Like, stop giving me the excuses. I'm not a doctor by any means, but when I can go ahead and I can see failure rates just by metrics that I'm revealing, when I can see all of those, why, and you're trying to do a root canal at 50, 60 minutes? No. And it's failing, and you're going back in, and you have an implant that fell out and another implant that fell out, and all these failures, like you're going to be even more broke. And I have to tell them, or you're trying to do this about the proper education or the relationship. You can't be selling online being like, oh, $800 implants, right? And you're getting the same amount of quality patients that are coming in. They don't understand quality dentistry either, right? But that's a demographic that is coming in that they don't understand that. And so when they're really upset, everybody's going to know about it. And those are the ones that also think that doctors have this Corvette and a yacht and everything else like that. And there's opportunistics out there. And I have to tell the doctors all the time, like the amount of times I've had to help doctors with different BS lawsuits, right? Like auditing. And I get called up after the fact to review these things. And it's simple stuff. You didn't even write in the patient's chart. You're going off from, you have your team working on 40 and 50-minute adult prophies. You're not even looking at the exam. You're like, unless you go ahead and really like, let me kick you in the ass, shove your face in the dirt, I'm not going to be able to help you. I will stand by you, and I will help you get out of this. But like, you also have to change your ways, and you have to work on your people, because you have a revolving door of employees as well too. You're the problem. Like, you are the common denominator here. Pull it back. Relationships and loyalty. And that's like the number one thing I have to tell people. Nobody cares about that special deal. Should you grow your practice? Absolutely. Can you offer fun things? Like, if you're really great at Invisalign and you can offer some sort of, deal at the end of summer for whatever it might be. Absolutely. But you also have to have the relationships. You shouldn't be doing that just because you're drawing in new patients because you think you're going to convert them and all these other things that's going to go ahead and grow your practice. Work in the relationships with the people that are already walking in the door right now, and everything else will come.
Yeah, a handful of the right patients is way better than a lot of not so right patients, because you end up spending a tremendous amount of time, energy, and resources on people that aren't really
serious.
They're not interested in your mission. They're there for other reasons, primarily because you take their insurance.
Yeah.
And that's why there's loyalty to the insurance plan, but there's not loyalty to you. So when, Bob's Tooth Center opens up down the street and they're offering 50% off implants this week or something.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go over there. I'll go over there and have the implant done. Then I'll come back over here and have my teeth cleaned. And then they think they can work the system like that.
Yeah.
And, on their level of understanding, it makes sense, but it's incredibly foolish.
Yeah.
Right. I had a patient that a big part of my practice is TMD. I have a patient who the reason she came to me is because she had a very severe case of trismus as a result of crown procedure that she had done. And without getting a lot of the details on it, she had very little ability to even open her mouth at all for many weeks' time. And we're still only 50% of normal range right now after over a month of doing this. But she, obviously this was a traumatic experience for her, and the dentist referred her to me. And so I'm in a challenging situation because I don't want to disparage anybody, and there wasn't any, anything they did wrong. Sometimes just life happens. But even considering all of that, and she's in a temporary crown, and she asked me, should I have him deliver the permanent crown? I said, maybe it's probably better to just wait until we get a little more range of motion and comfort, and that's a procedure that's not going to strain you too much and make the injury worse. So turns out this past week the temporary crown comes off. So the next question she has to me is, well, will you put the permanent crown in for me? Okay. So, these are the situations we get into all the time. Well, I didn't do the preparation. I haven't seen the crown. I don't know what the margins look like. I don't know anything about the occlusion I've associated with that crown. And I said, no, I can't. If you want to become a patient in my practice, then this is going to be the process. We're going to have to kind of reboot our orientation, because up to this time, we're just been focused on getting your joint stabilized.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say, the vast majority of patients that come to us, and here's another story. Have a 70-something-year-old patient of mine. I've seen him for 20 or more years. He may have even been part of the practice that I bought in 1994. And I've done several crowns on him and routine, operative things. And, he's never been a super big fan of having dental work done, but that's kind of normal in this, in our world. And so he's in for a hygiene appointment on Wednesday, and my hygienist is super, super humanistic, and she's just kind of sitting in her chair, knee to knee with them, and kind of having a conversation. And he kind of just tells her his dental history, which was a lot of trauma when he was a kid at the hands of a dentist that was like really super insensitive. And for whatever reason, he ended up having to have a palatable injection, and a really bad experience with all of that. And he just went on and on about these horrible memories that he had. He'd never shared any of that with me before. And so when she discovered that he had this anterior 3-surface composite filling that was separating and was going to have to be leaking, it was going to have to be replaced, he's just it was like midbrain jumped in and went immediately in fear mode. Are you going to have to numb me up? Now, this is after me numbing him up many times, never hurting him ever. And that memory is still there from when he was 7 or however old he was. He's in his 70s. This is the way the brain works. Now, I will argue that particularly the older patients, most of them have some kind of memory like that, because dentistry wasn't that kind in the 60s and the 50s when they were coming up, and 40s. And so on a cognitive level, they understand you're a nice person, you've never heard them before, all that stuff, but their amygdala is screaming at them that they're in danger again. And so if we don't deal with people on that level, they're never going to make good decisions if that's driving a lot of their behavior. And that it takes addressing it. And sometimes it's not revealed for years. So, these scaled up, high delegation, low personal contact practices are set. This is how the lawsuits happen.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
There isn't a relationship with you at all. People don't. The bottom line is people don't sue people they like and are their friends.
No.
They give you grace when something doesn't quite go right. They let you redo it, whatever the situation is.
Yeah. Generous
But
assumptions.
when they have no significant relationship with you, and they're thinking they're looking at that new Porsche out there in the parking lot and wondering if that's yours. Yeah, they like on their way home, they're going, "Oh, this billboard, this lawyer here, call 1-800-LAW-NOW." And that's
It's
what
true.
they do. I mean, it's how the world works, folks.
Well, more in America than anything. There's so many billboards. There's places in the different countries you got to travel an hour plus to find like one attorney that takes care of a few cases a year. Like this, we were built on this, and even like it kind of reminds me as well too with the dental companies that the patient will call and say, "Well, they said that if you would have coded this, it would have been covered. So can you code it?" No. I'm not going to do insurance fraud for what but that's what they said, right? Like, no, it's not. And I tell people all the time, like, we tend to try in dentistry. I see the doctors, even any doctor, anybody that is in a point of care, they try to like make the loudest patients, like they feel like they have to do extra for them so that they don't get louder. And I'm like, those are the ones that are actually the ones you should be really afraid of, right? The ones that are demanding that, X, Y, Z. And yeah.
I mean, it took me many, many years, if really decades. Because in the beginning, I really just knew psychology on a very basic level. But I think every dentist needs to understand a lot about psychopathology because that walks through the door too. Some people aren't. Some people are predatory. Some people are, have bad intent. Some people are trying to see what they can get out of you because they think they deserve it or whatever.
Absolutely.
There are sociopaths that walk around this planet. Some of them walk in your door. There are a lot of narcissistic people. And they're dangerous people to be doing elaborate aesthetic dentistry on.
Absolutely.
And if you don't know that you're potentially walking into a big trap with those people, that's how people get sued. It's because they're not managing expectations. And some of these people's expectations can't be managed. And so, my rule of thumb that's evolved over many years is the faster a patient wants to go, the slower I'm going to go. I want it now. I've got a second home in Miami and I'm up here for a couple months and I've decided I want veneers. Can we do them next week? No, we can't do them next week.
So that's dangerous.
But, some people have so much money, they're used to, buying and selling.
Getting what they want.
People.
Yeah.
And they've got no patience for people that don't give them what they want immediately. So they're not going to be open to any conversations about how complicated their occlusion is and why they might not be a good candidate for veneers unless they had some orthodontic treatment before that or whatever, or their joints are unstable or whatever it might be. They don't want to have that conversation. They want the veneers now. And if you don't give them to them, they're going to, you're going to get a bad review or whatever.
Yeah.
So, dealing with human beings is complicated. And when you try to do it faster and faster and faster, you're just making it more and more complicated and more unpredictable. And then you get yourself in these spots where you're getting attorney letters or state board letters. And, you were well intended what you did. And there you are.
Yeah. Well, it's that that thirst for money, right? Like that there's a hole in the schedule. And I tell people all the time, yeah, I get it. The insurance company has also made you desperate that if there is a hole in the schedule, you're not making money either. So then you would make these chances where it's like, you know what, let's make this work. We can make this work next week. Right. And that's how
Well, there's,
much
the
happens.
fact that people have such unacceptably high overhead. They've got it, they set production goals at the morning meeting. And it's like, you better find something so that we can hit that today, because that's what we got to do to get this goal. And if we get this goal and we do this for a year, I'm going to take you all to Bermuda on a cruise. I mean, it's like, where's the conversation about what's appropriate and healthy for the patients? It's gone because everything is money centered.
Yeah.
And this has become too much a part of the dentistry culture.
Yeah. It's, I tell people all the time, should you know your numbers, right? So that way, you should know your overhead. You should know all of those things to watch where they're growing and the trends that you have that's going on. But at the end of the day, like your goals should be, and the goals that I set for the clients, is what is your care philosophy? Now let's make sure, how do we adhere by it? Right? Like, how do you not let a patient or the insurance company dictate the care for what you believe? Right? Because then you're going to hit your goals that you have if you're not the one that's constantly deviating from what's right, and you're feeling like you have to do something more. If a patient comes in and you know that maybe their insurance doesn't cover it every 2 years, you're going to sit down, you're going to educate them, and you're going to say, listen, in the last 6 months you've had a filling and I'm sorry, I got to take these. If you can go a period of time, a year, without anything going on, let's talk. Let's make sure anything else is going on, and it just is, those are the goals. And I even try to tell the team, I'm not going to have you guys come in here and like feel like you got to sell everything, right? If you get X amount of crowns this month, we get blah, 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 right? Nobody needs that. I want you to, the way you're going to grow is following your own care philosophy. That's it. And it's just so hard because you're like, there's the competition of all of these weekend courses, right? And what more, and how quickly can you do, this type of exam, and what should you be doing to have that psychology for what it is that you're saying right to the patient that makes them feel that they need to have, all of this other work that's, being done. That's not really even focusing on the fact that somebody's got periodontal disease, right?
Well, that was going to be my comment, is that and again, this is rooted in the way dental insurance is structured, and therefore influences how people think and how they set their priorities and make decisions. Very few dental practices are truly health-centered. And what do I mean by that? They put the establishment of stable health as goal one. So a patient that comes into your office that has bleeding gums, for whatever reason, shouldn't be having a lot of procedures done on them. They're infected. All right. So how many surgeons voluntarily do surgeries in infected wound sites? 0.
Yeah.
So how many parts of your body immediately start to bleed when you just barely touch them? Is that normal? But in dentistry, we've normalized it. We just think, because that's what we're seeing every day. And why are we seeing that every day? Is because our patients aren't healthy yet. Yet we're prescribing crowns. We're thinking about doing veneers on them, or this or that. We've got all these production goals, and we got the cart before the horse. And this goes way back to the time of Bob Barkley. The person has to establish stable, independent health first. That needs to be the focus of the conversation. Now, if you're way in debt and your overhead's too high, you don't have time for conversations like that. You don't have time to wait for the person to work it out. And so what do? You put the cart before the horse, and just one thing leads to the other, and before long, your schedule is full of people with infections, and you're trying to treat them with procedures and procedure codes. And procedures don't heal people. People heal people. What they do at home, what they eat, their habits, that's what drives health or dysfunction. And if you're not in a relationship with the person to facilitate movement in the right direction over time, then what are you doing? You're just like you're the repair shop. You're the guy bringing the 20-year-old car in that hadn't been serviced in 20 years, and you go, one of these spark plugs isn't firing. Let's replace that.
It's always just so profound to me. And they come in, instead of addressing what's causing all of these other systemic issues that we have in our oral health, and you're just putting then these are the patients that get to say, every time I come into you, it's more money, because you're not addressing what's underlying that's causing the other problems first. You could go, I believe, like, there's an opportunity to find some simultaneous multidisciplinary approach for it as well too, right? If somebody has their front tooth busted out, but they also have the bleeding gums, they also have some sort of prioritization, but they also have to have the education to say, I can fix this for you. However, this isn't going to be the end of it because of XYZ that is going on. And I'm sorry.
Sure. Well, a lot of people come to the dentist due to a motivation related to a perceived issue.
Yep.
What's the magnitude of that? That's totally variable. They could have fallen and chipped their front tooth last night.
Yeah.
Or they could just have been noticing over the last several weeks their gums are bleeding more than they used to, or everything in between.
Yeah.
And so, in the obvious thing that the person can easily understand, that Barkley would call that their present preoccupation, is what he would call that. He would say, you need to address their present preoccupation as quickly and as inexpensively as you can. And sometimes he would even do that for free, because the patient has no relationship with this person. And his goal is to get them back and to allow them to do a proper examination and have a conversation about what are the drivers behind the problem in the first place. Mm-hmm. So because dentists are so money and procedure centric today, because of the way dental insurance is structured, they start treatment in diseased mouths on people they don't know. That's a bad thing.
Yeah.
It's a bad thing. It can put you in a bad place. It can put you in a place where one day one of your patients is going to come into your waiting room and drop $65 of pennies on your front desk and in a waiting room full of other patients and scream and yell and make a scene. Yep. Okay? How do I know that?
I wonder.
Yeah. So, this is just it. Human beings are human beings. You're not changing that.
Yeah.
They've been that way. It doesn't matter whether you got a scanner or not. It doesn't matter whether you're milling your crowns in the back room or not. It doesn't matter whether you got a CBCT machine or not.
Yep.
So unless you are willing to put the work in to understand the people side of dentistry, you're forever going to be frustrated.
Yeah. Running uphill.
So, the famous saying from Dr. Pankey that is, I never saw a tooth walk into my office. But
True.
what are we trained to do in dental school? Fix teeth, be focused on, resolve the problem. And the tooth issue is commonly a symptom of a much bigger problem of the system breaking down. Occasionally it's because of an accident, but more commonly it's because the system's breaking down for one reason or another. It hasn't been managed well in the past, or the patient's situation has changed a lot. Maybe their diet, they are destroying their mouth because all of a sudden they've picked up a habit of drinking a lot of sodas every day or whatever it is, something massive dysbiosis in their mouth that's occurred. So being too centered can get you in that corner, and you're like barking up the wrong tree, trying to solve problems that really can't be resolved unless you address the cause.
Mm-hmm.
But, sadly, Delta Dental doesn't support that very well. So those are tough decisions on how much you want to dance with the devil. So
it really is true, though. It's, there's no autonomy of care and there's no sustainability in the system of in-network participation, especially when it comes to private practice dentists. And, Aspen Dental being just as infiltrated into there, and doctors, you can't have a general practice bring out an associate and pay and give the benefits as you would a big DSO, right?
Right.
And they know this. That's why they can go in and they can fund a whole operatory at the university. They can go in and they get the spotlight. I'm talking about this and stuff. And it's, yeah.
Well, I mean, in certain ways, it's not a bad place for a dentist to start. They're getting support. They're paying off a few bills. They're getting a little bit of breathing room, as long as they don't do something stupid like get mesmerized by the new Porsche that just came out.
That's exactly it.
And so otherwise they just get stuck on the treadmill. But, I know a number of dentists that, started that way, started at Aspen, other places like that. And after just kind of getting their clinical chops together for a little bit and then getting philosophically clear about what they really want to do with their life.
Don't want to do.
Then they they make strategic decisions demographically and otherwise. And then they get training that's aligned with that, and they do well. They do very well because they've thought it through. They're not just reacting to the bad situation that's evolved.
The exposure to something in that situation and being there and realizing when you come out that that's something that you're going to strive to not go towards, right? This quantity over quality, the loss of autonomy of care, this stamp of what you're supposed to do each and every time, right? It's like on this assembly line. And I think that there's so many doctors that do come out and recognize that and understand it. And then there are ones that still continue to fall down the hole because they're getting paid a ton of money because they did start getting mesmerized into the cult that they were at. And they were starting to do all of these things. And, I mean, I'm human. I like money. We just bought a new house. My husband and I each are both business owners. I shouldn't say we bought a new house, we built one. Like we are human at the end of the day as well too, but in just as much as dentists are, but to have, these other outside factors that are, making you try to live up to the Joneses of all these different weekend courses and the sales. And if you spend X amount of money with our company for supplies, we're going to give you this CAD cam at the end of the year, and now there's that pressure because guess what? If we don't produce, which means we don't buy the supplies, we're going to have to pay for this insanely expensive machine. And it just is on so many levels that it's damaging. And I tell people all the time when they come back and they're like, well, this deal is only to the end of the month. I go, bullshit. If you want one in 6 months, you tell them that I'm not going to buy it until you give me that deal. Guess what? They're going to find a way to freaking give you the deal. Maybe not in that moment, because that's a business person too. They want their money, and like there's just so much.
In 6 months, it'll be outdated because the Model 207B will be out, and the one they have is only worth like 2/3 of what they just paid for it, and they're screwed there. So I mean, that's the way technology is, Yeah, you get caught on that treadmill where everything's got to be updated and replaced very frequently. You're you really got to produce even more in that circumstance. So,
Yeah. And I tell the teams all the time when they come in, and I try to like point out some of those behaviors of the doctor of saying, like, I know they're going to pace up front when there's a hole in their schedule, and they're going to ask if you saw that there's a 9 o'clock opening, and you're just like, I stare at the computer all day long. Of course I know that that's there. Right. But I'm like, yeah, I don't understand. It's most doctors that's the insurance company has made that. The insurance company has made it where if there isn't a button that chair, like there's some panic that's behind it. And, there's the sales of the equipment and the deals that they have to make and everything else like that. There's this tremendous amount of pressure. I would never, if my kids ever asked me if they could be a doctor, I would be like, please no. I'm so glad one wants to be a mechanic. The other one wants to do auto body work. Please, I get so excited when I'm working with a doctor that's been in it as long as they have. And you are so way ahead of the trend line to know that you went decades ago and realize, because I would have sworn, as you're telling me in like your story, I would have sworn you would have told me it was like within the last like 10 years, right? You're just like, I'm done after 20 years of dentistry, like doing it like this. But your voice is just a powerhouse for doctors to realize, like, you can do this and you can do it well before it's popular. You can do it during the trend when the insurance company was still trickling at some increase in reimbursement. They weren't nearly as bad as what they are now. And you dove right in.
Well, if you haven't, Alan probably told you about my book, and that would be helpful to read that, because that's kind of a real deep dive into all of these things.
Yeah,
so
I will.
Some of your clients who are ready for that kind of conversation might appreciate reading that as well.
Yeah, I will. And I think this conversation again too is that my goal to educate the general public of hearing the systemic challenges and where we're at today is I'm hoping to have a ripple effect in the industry. I know I'm not going to change things. I know I'm not going to make the 180, but I'd like to make a little bit of a wave.
Well, I mean, it's reaching a tipping point like no other. Back in the early 1980s, and I talk about this in the book, there was a practice consultant named Avram King, and he talked about the marketplace segmenting exactly the way it is right now. He was kind of a futurist, and he could see the meta trends, and he said, this is what's going to happen. There's going to be practices that are going to be they're going to be government clinics, directly and indirectly. There's going to be this middle market that's going to be primarily what he would call retail dentistry. That's just marketing and merchandising driven. And that's what we're seeing, Aspen, all of these. And he said there's going to be another tier that's going to be health-centered, comprehensive relationship-based health-centered. And it's going to be the smallest segment in the marketplace, but it's, for those who understand it, it's a massive opportunity because it's grossly underserved. The other two parts of the marketplace are not, they're procedure-centered, they're insurance-centered, they're not people-centered. So if you can build a practice around being truly person-centered, then the more sophisticated, discriminating person is going to migrate towards you over time.
Yeah.
That's just the way it works. That's why the good restaurant in town is always busy on the weekends.
Mm-hmm.
It's no different than that.
I completely agree.
But it's playing the game on a completely different level. But I go into that in quite a bit of detail in my book.
Yeah. I promise you, today I am purchasing the book. I try to go actually simultaneously because I drive so much. So I always get an Audible and another paper copy. So I've got something to read at night. We've got something to hear on my drive. So between your books and Dr. Stern's, I think I'm going to be pretty busy on it. So you're an incredible wealth of knowledge. And now I just have like all these different ideas that I want to be able to email you and say like, hey, can we get another recording on and talk about this. Like, tell me where your thoughts are on this, because there's so much stuff that I don't know. My scope is just what I've been exposed to, and I want to continue to be exposed to it. And I want to take other people on that journey with me at this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, there's some amazingly sophisticated practices out there. There's some practices you'll walk into and you'll go, wow, I didn't even know you could do that. Yeah. They're doing so many cool things and having so much fun and helping people in really sophisticated ways. And people are not arguing with them about their fees. There's none of that. They're like in a different universe, and they just left everybody behind. See ya. Go struggle with Delta. Have a good time. We're gone. Bye-bye.
That's like I tell people all the time when they say, do people have you ever had a failure? And I'm like, go Google. Tell me who's all failed. Go Google. And tell me if you see anybody, dig deep. If somebody completely failed and bombed and didn't regret this, just let me know about it. I'd love to call them. I really enjoyed talking with you, and I've already taken an hour and a half of your time and just your expertise and your outlook.
This is much, much longer than most people are going to want to listen to me ramble on about this and that.
I really hope that, we connect again. And now that I think that we've got like this very strong alignment and moral compass in so many areas, I want to then talk to you just about a few different other layers.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Hey, you take care.
All right. Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye.